Dopey Podcast. Dopey Podcast.
Well, now is the time for the Dopey Podcast, where you call in and put all your life on blast, and you call in and talk about your past, because your life was furious, hardcore and fast. So now is the time for the Dopey Podcast.
Dopey Podcast.
It's the Dopey Podcast, the Dopey Podcast, yo. This is the Dopey Podcast. This is the Dopey Podcast. Now if your life was furious, hardcore and fast, you feel like you want to put your life on blast, just call up the show and I talk about your past, cause now is the time for the Dopey Podcast.
Dopey Podcast.
It's the Dopey Podcast, the Dopey Podcast, yo. This is the Dopey Podcast. This is the Dopey Podcast.
This episode of Dopey is brought to you by our very good friends at Oro and Not Aloe Recovery. Both, of course, were founded by our friend Bob Forrest and his very good friends, Evan, Jared, and Bob. The mission? To create a rehab that treats addiction and alcoholism with connection and compassion rather than control. They have many decades of experience in treating co-occurring mental health disorders, including the dread SMI. They make sure that if you go to Oro, your detox is as comfortable as possible, which is incredibly important if you're kicking heroin or alcohol, or even if you're kicking crack or meth. A comfortable detox is a comfortable detox. They have amenities you wouldn't believe, including sound bath meditation, equine therapy, surfing, and of course, the potentially spiritually transformative sweat lodge. So if you're fucked and you're willing to go to sunny Southern California, I highly recommend Oro. Everyone else I know does too. Check out OroRecovery.com. This episode of Dopey is also brought to you by our friends at SoberLink. At SoberLink, somebody cares about your recovery. Unfortunately, relapse is so common, especially when it comes to alcohol, because it is widely available and highly prevalent in many social settings. That's why having true accountability and a deterrent from drinking is so important for staying sober. SoberLink has been empowering and helping people with alcohol use disorder and alcoholism since 2011 and is trusted by hundreds of treatment facilities. The SoberLink system consists of a portable, handheld device that documents proof of sobriety in real time, keeping you connected to your family, friends, sponsor, treatment professionals, recovery coaches, or anyone else who worries about your well-being. As an exclusive offer to the Dopey Nation, to our listeners, email info@soberlink.com and mention Dopey for $50 off your device. Do it for that someone who cares. Help SoberLink keep you off of the sauce. This episode of Dopey is also brought to you by our good friends at Knockin' Doors Down, a podcast with the mission to end the stigma around addiction and mental health with humorous, honest, and vulnerable conversations featuring guest celebrities, experts, and everyday people. Celebrity guests sharing their stories of addiction and mental health issues include Charlie Sheen, Bam Margera, Kelly Osbourne, AJ McLean from the Backstreet Boys, Cheryl Burke from Dancing with the Stars, Denise Richards, and Gary Busey, to name a few. Also, I was on the show, which was awesome. Hosted by Jason, in recovery for addiction, childhood trauma, sexual trauma, and a family lineage of addiction. Co-hosted by Mikey, who struggles with substance abuse and mental health issues, including depression and anxiety. Knockin' Doors Down is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts, and full videos are available by going to kddpodcast.com. Check it out. Hello, and welcome to another exciting, robust, and super special episode of Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. My name is Dave. I hope you guys are all very well out there, wherever you might be. If you are somewhere on the outback in Australia, or maybe in smoggy California, or maybe you're riding the rapids of a river somewhere in Iowa or someplace. Are there any rivers in Iowa? I don't know. I don't know where there are rapids. Maybe it's Colorado that has whitewater rafting. That's one of my sober fantasies, to do a whitewater rafting trip. Another sober fantasy is to go scuba diving. I'm going to go scuba diving. I want to go scuba diving before all the reefs are wiped out. I'm not sure if there are any robust reefs left. Dopey Nation, if you are aware of any robust reefs, please write me an email at dopeypodcast@gmail.com. I just got an email and I need to read it because it's so sweet. It's from a woman, and she says, Dave, just a quick line to say thanks for your podcast. I listen every week and started after the This American Life episode. After hearing their story, I went back and listened to all of your episodes. They were great to listen to on long solo drives and late nights. One of my favorite things about Dopey is your great taste in music. Thank you. Not only your covers, which always seems to be songs I love, like Lou Reed or the Stones, whatever, but your opening music selections are often really great tunes I had long forgotten about, like today's Dopey podcast theme by Rocker T. And I definitely recommend checking out Rocker T, Nicer by the Hour on Spotify. Anyway, more importantly, I want to thank you for turning me on to artists like Langhorne Slim and Riley Walker. I'd never listened to either of them, but did so after each of their episodes. They are both fantastic musicians, and I really love their catalogs. So thank you, since I needed some new music suggestions. Also, you are a natural interviewer, and I hope you can go full-time with your podcast media career. I hope you and your family are well. Sincerely, Kelly from Kensington, Maryland. Thank you, Kelly. I cannot tell you how much that means to me. I'm very interested in hearing the Dopey Nation's response to our music at the front. Normally, nobody says nothing about it. Nobody ever talks about Rocker T. Nobody ever talks about the Fat Albert. Nobody ever talks about Pay Attention, or people did like the Dopey, which is by my friend Brer Bryan. But if you have any comments about the Dopey music, please write me an email at dopeypodcast@gmail.com as well. Excuse me, I'm getting over a bad cold, and if you're a true fan of Dopey, you know that when I have a cold, it's good times. I get to stay home a bit, get in bed, catch up on some shows. Just want to share with you some of the shows that I've caught up with really quickly. First of all, Tang, an American Saga, is really kicking in. They just released Cream, Cash Rules Everything Around Me. The only thing annoying about Tang is the way the actor who plays the RZA talks. It's fucking annoying. There's no way the RZA talks like that. Another show that I've caught up on is Succession. And I've had a lot of fun watching Succession. It makes me feel nervous, and they're kind of annoying, but just that much wealth is just relaxing in its like bounty and like sensual pleasures of opulence. It's fucking awesome to see the wealth and to hate the rich, and also to admire them secretly. And also, most importantly, the great Larry David is back with Curb Your Enthusiasm, and dude, this new Curb, Richard Lewis, dream Dopey guest, Richard Lewis, who we're never going to get. He's in bad shape. I think he's sick and old, and I doubt he's ever going to come on Dopey. I've written him from Katz's social media, though, and he's responded to me, but he's never responded from Dopey social media. But they replaced Richard Lewis with Albert Brooks, and Albert Brooks is fantastic. And in the first episode of Curb, Albert Brooks decides to throw himself a funeral while he's still alive, which is something that I've always wanted to do. Hilarity ensues. I cannot recommend it enough. And that's my TV picks of the week, my sick picks. And then in other unwell news, it had been 14 or 15 days since I went to a 12-step meeting, so I went back last weekend. I was actually on the phone with the great Ray Brown, who right now is somewhere in Mexico. I think he's on a bus towards the Yucatan Peninsula. Yesterday, he climbed a mountain and went to the top of the pyramid, and I think we're going to get him to call in sometime next week. So look out for Ray Brown. Let's wish him well down in lovely Mexico. And I was talking to Ray on the phone, driving to a meeting, and all of a sudden, I've become the person who's like, I really need a meeting. And like I really, it's just weird. Like I always resented people who said they needed a meeting. I didn't resent them as much as I thought they were annoying. And the truth is that I went to my meeting on Saturday, then I went on Sunday, and then I went on Monday. And it really actually did the trick. I don't know. It was important for me to hear the message. It was important in a lot of ways. When I watch old TV shows, I feel transported to the time I watched it originally, which was oftentimes all fucked up on drugs. And I think when I go to 12-step meetings, I'm often transported back to the time that I was in trouble and the meeting really saved me. And it's like when they talk about keeping it green or whatever, it reminds me of that. And I just had a really, really good few meetings, and it really, I don't know, it reinvigorated the spirit. It got me more spiritual, feeling good, and that's it. That's all I have to say about it. God is everything or God is nothing. In very exciting news, Sunday, October 31st, we are launching our new YouTube show, Good Morning Dopey. And Good Morning Dopey is like, I don't know, it's along these spiritual lines of the daily reflections out of the 12-step stuff, and I read the daily reflections and I try to make sense of it, and we've recorded 36 episodes of it. So if you have time on Sunday, check out Good Morning Dopey on YouTube. But even more important than that, if you're a Dopey Nation person, you should check out Patreon. Dopey Patreons at www.patreon.com/dopeypodcast. There's tons of great shit. Fucking new Ask Erin on Patreon. Videos, old segments with Chris, music, my dad, other stuff. Check it out. Please, when you give to Patreon, you help making Dopey more dopey, and you get me a little closer to doing Dopey full-time, which is really all I want to do at this point. So thank you for supporting Patreon. Thank you for checking out Good Morning Dopey on YouTube. We have a really fun and exciting show today. We have a Canadian guest on the show, which I'm sure Carneef is happy about, and a bunch of our other Canadian audience, including Karina and Catherine. I'm giving you little shout outs there. Any other Canadians, forgive me for missing the boat. But today we have a hockey player. Oh, you know who's going to love today? Is Randy Robles, straight out of Canadia, who loves hockey. So today we have the great Theo Fleury on the show. And if you don't know who Theo Fleury is, he played for the Calgary Flames, where he won the Stanley Cup. He also played for the New York Rangers, the Colorado Rockies, and the Chicago... What's the fucking hockey team in Chicago? I want to say it's the White Sox, but according to Sam, Dopey producer, it's actually the Blackhawks. We also have the great Erin Khar back on the show to answer some of your questions with the Ask Erin, and which is always a treat. But before we get to that, I just want to say that this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Check out betterhelp.com/dopeypodcast, because life is full of stressors, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you have, your life is probably stressful. Lord knows that mine is. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Unload the stressors and get some unbiased feedback. You'd be pretty surprised at what you might gain from it. See if it's for you. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Dopey listeners in the Dopey Nation get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/dopeypodcast. That's BetterHelp.com/dopeypodcast. Check it out. Here he is, straight from the great North Way. I think that's what you say. The Great White Way. Is that what you say? So the Great Up North. What do you say? What's the thing you say?
The Great North.
Thank you, Sam. The Great North, Mr. Erin Fleury. Hello and welcome to Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. My name is Dave. I have a very, very patient Canadian on the phone with me. He's not only a patient Canadian, he's a superstar NHL hockey player. He's a TED talker. He's a fucking author. He's a figure skater, country singer, survivor. His name is Theo Fleury. Welcome to Dopey.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, and appreciate any opportunities I get to talk about addiction. So,
what about dumb shit, Mr. Fleury? Do you enjoy talking about dumb shit as well?
Yes, I've done a lot of dumb shit in my life, so
you
comes
and
with the territory.
You and me both, for sure. But I never played hockey. I can barely ice skate. So you're like a superhero as far as I'm concerned. I'm like a nerdy Jew from Manhattan. So you and I are very opposite, but at the same time, we're both the same, right?
You got it. You got it. Unfortunately, we got that, that addictive brain, right? So
yeah,
I get it.
I've heard you say a lot of times that you have no regrets, though, after everything that went down. Do you still feel like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one life moment could have put me on a different path or a different road or whatever, right? And I really believe that there are no coincidences in life, and that everything happens for a reason. And when you grasp onto the concept of spirituality, which is the first 3 steps of any 12-step program, then you give up control and you turn your will and your life over to something greater than yourself, so that, you don't have to fucking manage shit anymore. You just go with the flow and let it happen.
It's funny because you and I were I was really struggling in Dopey Nation. The audience is called the Dopey Nation, Theo, just so you know. So Dopey Nation, me and Mr. Fleury here were on the phone, and I was panicking, fucked up, because I couldn't get the gear to work. And like in that moment, all spirituality is out the window. Seriously.
Exactly. Yeah, is it ever, right? Yeah, because we get stuck in our own head, and we're easily frustrated. What is it? Irritable, restless, and
discontented.
Sort of our life. Discontentment. That's it for sure. So that's right.
But like, I mean, like for me, like when people at my meeting, I go to a meeting fairly often on the beach in Long Island. Okay. They meet every morning at 8 a.m. and everybody shares this, something similar to what you said about there being no coincidences. And like, I think because I'm cynical, I don't say everything happens for a reason. I say the reason everything happens is because it happens. And if you want to say that's either way, it's a flip side to the same coin, right?
Right. Yep, for sure. For sure. But there's a lot of amazing things that have happened in my life. I turned my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand it. And when I did that, that's when things started to change.
Right.
So
you came from like the ultimate dopey scenario. Your dad was a hardcore alcoholic and your mom was a hardcore drug addict with pills, and you grew up in that environment. How much do you think that, the genetic factor plays a part in your addiction?
Yeah, I think part of my trauma experience, right, was dealing with, that at an early age. And, there was a lot of chaos, a lot of, insanity, some violence, unpredictability. He didn't have the ability to, completely 100% be there for me, guide me, all those things. And those things affect you, and obviously, I am my father's son because I followed in his footsteps and had my own stuff going on, right? So
I saw your dad interviewed, and it was so funny because he couldn't say how great you were. He basically said, I saw how great you were, and then I realized I was great in the interview I saw with him. You know what I mean? Like he reflected on his own greatness as a hockey player, watching you succeed. Was that built into the relationship? That kind of like jealousy of your success?
It's still there.
Right.
So just learn to don't pay too much attention to it. But I get why, he feels that way, because he, too was a great hockey player and had an opportunity to, maybe make it to the show. And, he suffered a very horrific injury to his leg that, caused that dream to, go away.
It's amazing how that works, like the sperms going to the egg. All of us that want to make something happen and the things that have to happen in order for you to get to the show or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And you started playing hockey how old?
5 years old when I first put on a pair of skates. So it was a very magical experience. Sort of instantly fell in love with the game, and it was a great escape from what I was experiencing at home. And when I was at the rink, guess what? I didn't have to be at home, so I spent the majority of my childhood in arenas and working on my craft,
which is amazing. And also just probably, I've never skated well, like I've never come close, but when you watch you skate, it's like watching somebody flying. Did it feel like that?
Yeah, I subscribe to, the Malcolm Gladwell theory of 10,000 hours. And basically, what he says in this book called The Outliers is, if we want to be the elite of the elite of the elite in whatever field we choose, we have to put in 10,000 hours of practice. And so basically, from the time I was 5 until I was 15, when I finally left home to, pursue this professional hockey career, I put in 10,000 hours, and because of that, that's what made me great. And that's what made, me have all the success was I put in time, refining my craft.
And how similar, like I know that I started using as a way to cope with, feeling insecure or not wanting to deal with this or that, or, just because I was uncomfortable in my own skin. And I would imagine that hockey served that purpose for a while. Did it?
Yeah, absolutely. It became an obsession. It became an addiction, and like everything else in my life, right? But some cool things happened, while I was, sort of obsessed. Was, I was a part of a team. I was instilled with some really great morals, that I still have and use today, and so it wasn't all bad.
Of course not.
I think there's healthy addictive behavior to go along with destructive addictive behavior as well. So, there are healthy addictions as well. And for me, hockey was one of those healthy addictions.
How old were you when you had your first drink?
Well, so as I was sort of climbing up the ranks as a kid, I ran into this coach and scout and recruiter. Basically, this guy promised me a one-way ticket to the NHL. When I was 15, I moved to Winnipeg. And over the next 2.5 years, this particular coach, raped me 150 times over a 2.5-year period. And so around that time, I discovered this wonderful liquid substance that came in a brown bottle called alcohol. And, I became an instant alcoholic.
And this guy, this scumbag, piece of shit, predator is Graham James, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just hearing your story, like I just have to say I'm sorry that this happened to you, and it's just the worst thing. And I think a story just broke today about a hockey player who was molested.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a thing? Is that a thing across all sports, or is it specific to hockey?
No, it's a societal issue.
Right.
The amount of pedophiles that are walking free on this planet is, would make your skin crawl.
Revolting.
And I really believe it lurks in the underbelly of, society, and it's everywhere, right? And but mostly we find these guys in, children's organizations. They infiltrate, children's organizations, and they groom the adults first, and then once they put themselves in a position of power and trust, then they start grooming the kids, and next thing you know, they're molesting hundreds of kids. So
and this guy put you in a horrible position because your destiny in your mind, do you think you could have made it to the NHL without this guy in retrospect?
Yeah, there's no doubt that I would have either way, but at the time, how many 5'6" guys have actually played the NHL? I bet you can't even count on two hands how many 5'6" guys played in the NHL, especially during my era. And so, that was the biggest sort of obstacle that I had to overcome was my size. But I needed a break. I needed somebody to believe in me. I needed somebody, and he was that guy, right? And unfortunately, he took full and complete advantage of my vulnerability and my drive and determination, and that's what happened.
And how soon after that did the alcohol find its way to your mouth?
Oh, it was like instant. From the very first sip I took, I was hooked.
And in that period where you were living with him, right?
No, I went over to his house 3 times a week.
Right.
For
right.
2.5 years, and stayed overnight. And he would molest me, and then I'd get up in the morning and walk to school, and go about my business. Go to practice, play games or whatever. But yeah, it was probably one of the most difficult times of my life. But on the other side of the coin, it really sort of led me to this place that I'm at today, and I found the true purpose for my life, and that's to help other survivors who've experienced what I experienced, and help them on their healing journeys.
Absolutely, and it's the fact that it's not just you, and that people out there have been through this. It's like what you're doing for these other individuals, and you're telling their story. It's immeasurable. So I think that's incredible. When you were a kid, before you got sober, how did you deal with the trauma then?
Well, I had hockey, and I had drugs and alcohol, right?
When was the first time you used drugs?
I was probably 16, I think I was.
What was it?
Well, marijuana, hashish, back in the day, that was probably the only thing you get your hands on. I didn't see cocaine until I was 19, and I was playing in the minors with Calgary Flames farm team. Remember the first time I ever did that, it was like, holy cow, this stuff is awesome,
Tell the story. Tell the story of being 19 and doing your first coke. That's what this show usually is all about.
Yeah. Well, I was just at a random party at one of the guys' places, and one of the guys said, "Hey, why don't you come in the bathroom?" I'm like, okay. And, he lifted the toilet thing, and there was a bunch of lines there, and he said, "You want to try this stuff?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And I remember I did the very first line, and I was like, "Holy shit, this stuff is awesome," And but I wasn't a regular user until probably 28, 29 years old is when I really, really got hooked on it. So
what was that about?
We all know that it's a very fast, quick trip to the bottom of the gutter when you're doing that stuff.
Yeah, for real. But you're talking about a 9-year period, which was probably, when you won the Stanley Cup and you were like a superhero, and you were this smaller hockey player who could do whatever you wanted to do for the most part on the ice. How did the alcoholism and the addiction kind of come to grow up with you?
Yeah, it was always a constant thing, right? But like I said, it wasn't. And obviously, when I first broke into the NHL, I wasn't making a lot of money, so cocaine's a very expensive habit to have, right?
Totally.
And so, as I became the superstar, so did my bank account, become exponentially larger as well, right? And so, it kind of fit hand in hand that, that I could, go and buy this stuff in large amounts, right? So
when did you know it was bad? When did you know that your life, because you had a fucking meteoric rise. You made like $50 million. You played in the biggest games with the biggest people. When did you know you were in trouble?
Yep. But, like all of us, it just, have you ever talked to somebody whose addiction got better? Have you ever met anybody where they said, yeah, my addiction, it got really good, and, fucking,
Yeah, that's a fantasy version of myself at age 25 or something.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It doesn't get better. It just gets worse, right? And that's, I was just part of that progression of addiction, right? And, by the end, it was ugly, really fucking ugly, Well,
by the end, you had gone from Calgary to New York to Chicago, Colorado, and it seemed like all the stops shit was worse and crazier. But in the rear view, you know what I mean? In hindsight or in retrospect, I know for myself, right? I knew I was fucking done the second I thought I could afford heroin. The second I thought I could afford heroin, I was done. I'd find myself in withdrawal at work, and I didn't make the money you made. I made nothing. I was just a total idiot. So I know that you were riding so high. There probably ghosts flashed, and you were like, "Uh-oh, maybe this isn't what I thought it would be or think it is." Do you remember where you start seeing yourself in the bad way instead of in the heroic way?
Yeah, well, that process took a long time. Even when I sort of, crossed that line and it was completely out of control, I still couldn't see it.
Right. Because you were a hero. Because the crowds were cheering for you and you were still capable of doing things that most people weren't. Yeah, that's interesting because I was just a loser. It was really easy to see. I wasn't going to make it. So but at the end, my performance went down, my accountability went down, my reputation went down, and still I couldn't see it, right? Everybody around me could see it, but I couldn't see it, right? And I would say, the last person to see their life going down the tubes is yours truly, right? Especially, when you're addicted, right? Your body's so addicted to the booze and the drugs and whatever, right? And then your mind takes over, and then it becomes this obsession where, you're, 24/7, all you're thinking about is getting loaded. Totally.
And that's ultimately what the disease is, right? Selfish, self-centeredness, fucking complete asshole.
Total insanity.
You don't care about anything else. You don't even care about anything other than fucking, trying to relieve this emotional pain that you're feeling, from past experiences.
How hard is it to stay loaded playing in an NHL season?
Well, how hard is it to be an addict, period?
The travel and the gear and the fucking wear and tear on your body. You have to keep up with staying high, right?
But you got to remember, the only place I felt comfortable and normal was in that 200 by 85 square box that I used to, go out on the ice every night. That was my happy place. Because when I was on the ice, I didn't have to think, right?
Yeah.
And I could just, perform. And, you're an ex-heroin addict. It's how the fuck did I do this? Well, I just did it, right? I didn't sit there and, philosophize how the fuck, I just fucking did it.
Right.
This is part of, you don't think about anything other than getting fucked up. And that's what a lot of, normies don't understand is, when I say to them, the only thing I cared about in the whole entire world was getting fucked up. They're like, what do you mean? That's the only thing I thought about was getting fucked up.
I get it. I totally get it. I didn't care about anything else at all. No, of course. Staying high You know, and with heroin, it's a timer on it. Like, how am I going to have heroin in 12 hours? You know what I mean? If I don't have heroin in 20 hours, I'm going to be sick. And if I don't have enough to actually feel it, what do I have to sell to get more? Whatever. Did you play loaded ever? Like, was that a thing? Did you ever do coke and fucking go out there?
No, never.
I interviewed Lenny Dykstra once. And and I think he had a similar thing where he just didn't play loaded. I think athletics is so high that it's bigger than the coke high.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. It's the anticipation of that first line or that fucking needle going into your arm. Like that's why we fucking chase it so bad.
Right.
That's why we're fucking that's why we got tunnel vision and we don't fucking care about anybody else, right?
Totally. What was the scene like? Were there a lot of athletes? Were you drinking and using with a lot of athletes, or were you like the lone person who was the big fuck up that everyone was like, oh shit, look, Theo's all fucked up, blah blah blah?
I did a lot of drinking with those guys,
right?
But when it was time, then I would disappear because I didn't want to drag anybody else into what I was doing. So, and I knew they couldn't keep up either. So,
where in your career was the first real bottom you felt?
Say that again.
Which city was the? I mean, like I heard stories about you spending $10,000 a night at Scores, but that doesn't sound like the bottom of bottoms. You know what I mean? Like that sounds like you're making enough money.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, when you have enough resources, you know, it prevents you from hitting rock bottom sooner, right?
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, you know, when I was in New York, I was making $400,000 every 2 weeks after taxes.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I'm going to Scores for a night and spending fucking 10 G's and, you know, lighting it up and fucking buying fucking Cristal and fucking, you know, 10 8 balls of cocaine and fucking we're partying, right?
I saw a documentary on HBO where you said after you'd go to the strip clubs, you would go to the kind of by the river where like homeless guys would be drinking and warming themselves by like the garbage can full of fire. Was that real?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Those are my people.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right?
Yeah.
Those are my people. Some of the most unbelievable conversations I had was with guys that are, you know, around the burning barrel. They're the only guys I related. They're the only guys I related to, right? You know.
So what did that feel like to be, you know, playing in the world's most famous arena, you know, Madison Square Garden, you know, to be capable of doing anything, but to feel at home in two places, one of which is the ice and the other one is with homeless people. It's crazy.
Right. Like attracts like, right? Like I have to admit, they were some of the most fucking intelligent conversations, you know, I've ever had in my life.
And you didn't need to lie to them about anything, right?
No. And the commonality was trauma. You know, we all experience trauma, which takes us on a path of trying to cope with this emotional pain and suffering that nobody can see. You can't see emotional pain. You can't see that stuff, right? That's why people are so baffled by the behavior. And basically all I was doing was trying to seek out a connection where people understood, where I got compassion and empathy. And those homeless guys, they got it.
That's
right?
Because you could feel that they felt exactly where you were coming from. Like it's a vibrational thing. Like trauma, knows trauma. It's very, very deep, actually, because you don't even realize it. Like, when did you realize that when did the word trauma even come into your world?
It didn't until I got, you know, probably 5, 6, 7 years into my sobriety when I started realizing that it was trauma that was my biggest problem. And the biggest obstacle I had to overcome was making sense of everything that happened.
Right. A series of traumatic incidents, starting with your family. But before we get to you getting better, I need to get to you getting worse. What was? Sorry, that's the arc of the arc of the addict that we need to follow.
Oh yeah, I get it.
I know you get it because you turned up in fucking crack houses in Chicago and shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were you smoking crack or were you doing coke in those spots? Were you shooting coke?
I was. No, I only snorted. I didn't like crack. None of that stuff.
I didn't like crack either.
Yeah.
So when you're running with the worst kind of drug addict scene, and then you have to show up at the rink, like just describe it for us a little bit.
It just became part of the routine, right? I have a very when you're in the best shape of your life, right, as an athlete, you can get away with a lot of stuff, right? And I was super ultra talented too, which was a curse and a blessing all at the same time, right? So I could show up at the rink, half cut for practice and be totally fine and nobody would even notice.
Right.
So
what does the bottom look like then?
The bottom is 16, 17 years ago. I had a fully loaded pistol in my mouth, ready to pull the trigger and end my life. Not because I wanted to die, but because I was completely exhausted from living in emotional pain and suffering. And I tried everything on the planet to fucking get rid of this feeling. And,
What did you try?
You name it. Fuck, I was going to therapy. I'd been to treatment 4 times.
Right.
Nothing was really working, right? And, I hadn't surrendered. I was in complete denial that I had a fucking problem. You know the deal, right? And then, but I needed to go through that exercise because basically what it said is, I actually wanted to live. I didn't want to die.
Right, but I mean, my question, and I don't mean to interrupt you at all. My question is, like, you're on this kind of like trajectory, and you're in denial about everything, and like, how does it go from there to the pistol in your mouth? Like, what are the stops between there?
I don't know. I think I was just, surviving, basically, right? And when you're in survival mode, you're not thinking clearly. You're not, and like I said, when you're an addict and an alcoholic, all you're thinking about is getting loaded. Where does that take you? Yeah, it takes you to fucking crazy places like crack houses in Chicago and, going 7, 8 levels below the city in New York City and hanging around with fucking transvestites and midgets and hookers and strippers and you name it.
Well, that sounds that doesn't sound that bad. That sounds exciting. That sounds like some kind of like fantastic journey to the center of the earth or something.
Yeah.
But I heard you talk about right before you put the pistol in your mouth that you were on some crazy coke bender where the cocaine psychosis was kicking in. Was the suicidal ideation moment as a direct result from that?
Well, I think it was a buildup of years of being in emotional pain, and I'd been up for 7 or 8 days without any sleep, and this thought popped in my head, and so jumped in my truck, drove down to the local pawn shop, and bought a gun and some bullets, brought them back to my house, and grabbed a bottle of vodka and a bunch of cocaine, and poured out a bunch of cocaine a la Scarface, snorted a bunch of lines, drank about a third of a bottle of fucking, vodka, and then picked up the gun, loaded the gun, and put it in my mouth,
So after that, and you realize you don't want to die, right? You realize that you're not ready to die. Where do you go?
Where do I go? I moved back to Calgary. I knew if I was going to get my life straightened around, it was going to happen in Calgary because my kids were here, my ex-wives were here, my old teammates were here, friends were here. And I knew that Calgary would be the place if I was going to get my life straightened around. It was going to happen here, and that's exactly what happened.
And so what was the first thing you did to get yourself on the right track? Like, had you done 12-step stuff then? Oh,
yeah.
So did you know you were like, I need to go to a fucking meeting? Like, that's the beginning.
Yeah, I was not interested in going to any meeting at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was... because what is treatment? What is treatment? So you go to treatment for 30 days. What do they do? They take away all of your coping mechanisms and they fill you a belly full of AA, and then they fucking send you back out onto the streets again.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're not dealing with what you need to deal with. You know, alcohol and drugs weren't my problem. You know, my problem was that I couldn't live life on life's terms because of my traumatic experiences that I had. And until I dealt with the trauma, I wasn't going to get sober.
So how did that like start to really come to fruition? Like that you recognized that?
I had to get sober first. Because if I don't get sober, I can't think clearly, right? Because what do? All we think about is getting loaded. I had to switch that mentality. Well, how do I do that? Well, I better fucking find some sort of spirituality like quick. and that's what happened. You know, I hit my knees in a washroom and I fucking had it out with God. And then at the end of the conversation, I said, God, take away the obsession.
And you were raised pretty religious though, right?
Well, if that's what you want to call it, I would say I was raised more fucking cult-like.
I'm not calling it anything. I'm just asking.
You know what I mean? You know.
Right.
But I remember somebody saying in a meeting one time that you get to pick your own God. I was like, wow, what a concept. That night in the washroom, I actually fucking talked to the God that I actually, believed in.
What did you say? You just said, please have this obsession be lifted.
Yeah, I said, take away the fucking obsession. And I went to bed, and the next day I woke up, and that was 5,883 days ago that happened.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And like yesterday, right? Yesterday I got on my knees and I prayed. I'm like redoing my 6th and 7th step just because whatever. Mm-hmm. And I got on my
humbly asked to remove all these fucking defects of character. I get it.
All right. I think the last thing I said, right, was help me be a worker amongst workers, right? As I'm getting up to face my day, and I had a cold, right? So I immediately decided that I shouldn't go to work at all. After praying to be a worker among workers, I decided I'm not going to go to work at all, and I deserve a day in bed. And I proceeded to fight with my wife and feel guilty and not do all the things that I had prayed for. And it's amazing how that goes. Like I can turn my will and my life over to the care of my higher power and then forget in the next second. I mean, I'm sober, but I struggle with that.
Yeah.
So tell me,
we'll always take it back. If we have the opportunity to take it back,
right?
We will, right? And then what are we? We're irritable. We're restless, hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Right.
You know.
So when you started opening the window to God and you started opening the window to spirituality, like how quickly did your life change and how quickly did your thought process change?
Immediately. Like it happened like right away.
Yeah.
The people who struggle with addiction are the people who don't grasp onto the concept, the God of my own understanding. That's what I find because I work in the field. So, it's one of the first questions I ask always with somebody who's coming to me and asking me for help is like, I go, where are you at with spirituality? And I would say the majority of people are pissed off at God. And I said, well, okay, well, let's just take the God out and let's talk about relationships. Like, how are your relationships? How's the relationship with yourself? Because ultimately, I believe that spirituality is about relationship. And if I have a good relationship with myself, how do you think all of my other relationships are going to be? They're going to be the same. But if I'm angry and resentful and pissed off, that's how all of my relationships are going to be. Exactly the same. Right?
Right. They'll totally reflect yourself. That's cool. Yeah. I struggle. I mean, like I have a higher power of my own understanding. But when you talk about it the way that you talk about it, and I hear people at the meetings talk about it the way they talk about it, it's a real gift. You know what I mean? Like when you can finally say, this is the higher power of my understanding, and I'm cool with that. It's like a superpower in itself.
Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely.
when did the trauma work come around? You know, when did the work around, you know, forgiveness and all that happen?
Well, the trauma work happened when I started to acquire tools. Because basically every single thing in my life I dealt, and what was in my toolbox was addictions, right? Alcohol, drugs, food, sex, gambling, fucking workaholism, right? Anything to distract me from feeling sadness, loneliness, anger, frustration, all those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to get a new toolbox. That toolbox is filled with meditation and spirituality and breathing exercises, because I not only do I have an addiction problem, I have a mental health issue too, right? I suffer from severe depression, anxiety, panic disorder, you name it, right? So I need a toolbox, that's filled with healthy, holistic practices, right?
Are you on any kind of medication for those things?
Nope.
Right.
No.
So,
I am anti big pharma.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
I'm pretty anti big pharma too, but I think that if people need to take stuff, they need to take stuff. I don't take anything. I think I'm fortunate for that. But no, yeah. I don't judge any.
There's certain
Right.
There's certain disorders that absolutely 100% you need
medication. Totally.
Bipolar, schizophrenia, but I just have general depression, general anxiety, right? So, and I went down the road of
psych
taking
meds.
medication. I was more fucked up than I was before. And then through my journey of spirituality, I discovered a lot of techniques where I don't need medication. I just need connection. I need relationship.
Be specific, because this can help our audience. What kind of techniques do you find really work for your depression or your anxiety?
Exactly what the two of us are doing right now.
Just talking
about addiction. Yeah, being honest and open and fucking, that's what it's all about. Honesty, openness, and willingness is talked about in the big book fucking 300 times.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And when you get to those three things, and if you can do those three things, that's fucking freedom.
Yes.
Freedom. I don't have to hide anything. I'm an open book.
Right.
Right?
And speaking of which, you wrote your book in 2009. It's called Playing with Fire, and it's fucking hardcore. Is that when you went public with the rape and with all that stuff with this guy?
What I was able to do in the trauma treatment stuff was I was able to find the gift in, my parents, the gift in my abuser, all of these things. I found the gift.
Please explain that for me.
And, well, what does adversity give us? What does going through adversity give us? What does it build in us?
Resilience.
Exactly. Right? And when you have resilience, you know that no matter what the good Lord upstairs throws on your plate, you're going to figure it out.
Right.
And that's the gift.
And that's why you have no regrets. It's the same thing.
That's why I have no regrets. Yeah. I've made apologies, but those experiences made me who I am today, good, bad, or indifferent. So many people get caught up in, oh, I hurt this person, or I did this, or whatever. No, this is part of your plan. This is part of your life. And the reason why you were given these experiences is so that you would learn.
Totally.
How do we learn? We learn by making mistakes.
Absolutely.
The only way we learn, right?
Absolutely.
So, and people are so caught up in shame and guilt and all those things. Those things fucking kill us. If we don't get rid of them, if we don't make sense of them,
we're haunted by them. We're haunted by them. We never get to shed them. No, I know exactly what you mean. And the book, is this incredible testimony to surviving. But the most powerful part is all the other people that got help from your trauma and you actually facing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you described like these kids showing up at your book signings, you know, and what it meant to you to see them showing up.
Yeah. Well, and it's a daily occurrence.
Yeah.
Every day, somebody reaches out because they've either heard a podcast, saw an interview, watched my documentary, read my books. So, and that's how it works.
And the mission now is to end the stigma around trauma and sexual abuse and addiction.
Yeah, and mental health,
Right.
mental illness.
Right.
They all have stigma attached to them. And that's why trauma, mental health, and addiction is the biggest epidemic on the planet. It's not COVID-19.
It's a disaster. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And all that COVID's done is it's just added another layer of trauma to our already traumatized history.
Right. Not being able to see our friends or our families or be
Exactly.
engage in the universe in a way that makes us comfortable and free.
Exactly.
No, I'm with you. I hear you.
100%.
You said, I heard you say that you pray for willingness on a daily basis.
That's it.
So when you pray for willingness, what are you willing to do?
Anything.
Right.
Anything.
Oh, I've got a couple more very controversial questions. Can you hang with that?
Yeah.
Okay. In that movie, your ex-wife really gives you shit. How do you deal with that?
That's her shit.
I thought you were going
shit.
to say that. And what about your brother? Same thing?
Same thing. Yep. Go to Al-Anon.
And how are your relationships with your kids these days?
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah. Step 9, we get to make amends to people, right?
Absolutely.
We get to apologize and we try to do better.
Totally. I love the word try in the amends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We get to try to do better. Absolutely. Now, as I've explained to you, our show originally started out as like the show about fucked up, juicy, horrible drug stories. Before you go, can you think of one thing in your prodigious drug addict career, some crazy fucking drug story? Just give me one.
Okay, so when I was living in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I was living out in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere, on two Jack Nicklaus golf courses. And so if I wanted to get into trouble, I would go to Albuquerque. And so I was spending way too much time there and getting into way too much trouble, and I was fucking driving high and drunk back to Santa Fe, right? So I used to go to this strip joint called TD's North in Santa Fe. And I got to be really good friends with one of the bouncers that worked there. So I said to him, I said, how much are they paying you here? Oh, they're paying me X. I said, would you like to come work for me? And he's like, what do you mean, work for you? I go, well, I need somebody to drive me around. I need somebody to buy my drugs. I need somebody to transport all the strippers from Albuquerque to Santa Fe to stay at my house. And so, this guy worked for me for about a year, and unfortunately he fucking overdosed on me one night at home. Yeah, it was fucking crazy. So,
did he die?
No, he's still living.
What was the OD?
On cocaine.
Ay. That's rare, right? The cocaine overdose is
rare.
Right?
Rare. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What about NHL?
But like I said, there was very few people that could keep up to me, and the carnage that was left behind, after some of these parties I had, there was fucking bodies all over the place, and I'd still be going fucking, like a bat out of hell. These people would all be fucking laying around, passed out, and fucking crazy shit.
I get it, and the battery in your back is you and the trauma and your ability.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's wild.
So, yeah.
What about, you ever get high with Lenny Dykstra?
No, I wish I did. I heard he was a beauty.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I really appreciate your time, Theo. Like, I appreciate your honesty and everything. It's awesome. And you're the first Canadian hockey player on Dopey.
There you go.
So that's cool.
But, you just, all you're doing is surviving. That's all you're doing, and you're seeking connection. What's the opposite of addiction? Connection, right? And when I finally plugged into, life on life's terms, I got better and I got honest.
Totally. And how often how often are you confronted with survivors of sexual abuse and rape and all this kind of stuff?
Every single day. Every single day I get an email or a private message.
When someone says, I can't get over what happened to me, like, what do you say?
Yeah. Well, I say, do you have a time machine? They're like, what do you mean a time machine? I go, well, you can't go back and change it, right? You can't change the past. Stop living in your past. And you can change the future.
Right.
And if you want me to help you, I can help you change the future. But you have to do absolutely every single thing I tell you
Right.
to do. That's surrender, right? I said, are you willing to surrender? Are you willing to fucking put an end to this fucking insanity?
And the people who are willing get better.
Yeah, absolutely. I have fucking millions of stories of debauchery and craziness. But that's not what it's about. It's about, the reason why I did all those crazy things is because I was in emotional pain. And I didn't know how to deal with the emotional pain. And I got sober and I started looking at the emotional pain, and, that emotional pain actually started turning into peace and joy and happiness and serenity, right? Because that's the ultimate goal. That's where we're trying to get to emotionally, is peace, joy, happiness, and serenity. That's the ultimate goal.
Totally.
Well, how do I get there? Honesty, openness, and willingness.
I appreciate it, man. And I hear what you're saying, and I think, how old were you when you got sober?
September 18th, 2005 is my sobriety date. So I don't even know how old I was. 36, maybe 37.
Right on. Wow.
37, yeah.
You are a fucking survivor, man, and I really do appreciate your time. And sorry for my fucking technical ineptitude at the beginning.
It's all good. It's all good, man.
I told you this would be the greatest podcast you've been on this week. Was I right?
It was.
See?
Yes.
There you go. Well, I'll tell you again. I really appreciate you coming through.
And when I'm in New York next time, I'll look you up.
I would love that. Please do.
Okay, brother.
All right, so that was pretty cool. That was Theo Fleury on the show, and now the great Erin Khar has returned to my father's apartment for another Ending the Dopey properly. Welcome back, Erin.
Thank you. Hello.
And we are in a different room
Yes.
in my dad's. Now we're in the dining room instead of the kitchen.
And it was so bright, I had to ask Dave to put the shade down a little bit.
Wow. And now?
And now it's great.
All right, cool.
I'm light sensitive.
Right. Does it give you migraines? It gives my daughter migraines.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you wear thick, dark sunglasses?
I like to wear a sunglass, yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't bust them out for the show.
I could have. Well, I was going to say, if you want it, what I was going to tell you before you put it down, I'm like, I can just put my sunglasses on, and then I'd look really cool.
You would, but nobody would see you
No.
except me, and then I'd feel like, what's going on under the glasses? Now, that was the great Theo Fleury, and I think when you're on the show after an interview, I like to say what I wish I had done differently first.
Okay.
And the one thing that I really wish I had done differently was asked him what it's like to be such a tough guy who now his currency is all vulnerability.
Right.
Like, that's an interesting duality, I think. And I bet
right.
you would have something interesting to say
And
about
he was kind of known for fighting. I mean, he was one of the guys that often got in fights, wasn't he? In
You
the
know,
hockey world?
I that's another thing that I wanted to say, like, but I'm such not a hockey fan,
Right.
that I was like, why isn't there more fighting in hockey anymore? That was the best part. But like, I saw a bunch of clips of him. He would take his stick and fucking break it, and he's missing a tooth. And he was very handsome and quick on the ice. And
a lot of hockey players are very handsome, and then they lose all their teeth.
Well, why? That's interesting, because I think it's the rough and tumble hockey player. Mm-hmm. Athletes, I think, well, you're a woman and you're attracted to men. So why don't you break down why hockey players tend to be attractive?
Well, I'm not 100% sure. I just went through like a hockey phase.
Why?
I went through because I was hanging out with people who were watching. It was like they were really, the LA Kings were like doing well. And
seems like you had a lot of phases.
So many phases. I've said, like, I've lived 100 lives, you know, and part of that.
You contain multitudes?
I contain multitudes.
What does he say? In I contain multitudes, I think he says, I like fast women and I like fast food. I contain multitudes.
Okay, is that the line?
I hope so. I mean, dude,
someone will correct
I
us.
like that line. That's Bob Dylan as an old man.
Yeah.
I like fast women.
And I like fast food.
I should Google it.
Yeah,
but
Google it.
What did you like about this guy?
What I like about him in particular, I mean, he was really good. That's why, I mean, when you told me that that's who you were going to be interviewing, I was excited because he was of the era in which I was watching hockey. He was also really small for a hockey player, which is unusual. My favorite hockey player at that time, just like side note, was Luc Robitaille, who played on the LA Kings. I loved him.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Mr. Robitaille.
I don't know why I liked him, but I did. But then a guy that
no, he doesn't say that.
No, he doesn't.
He says, I wish he'd said that. He says, I sing the songs of experience like William Blake. I have no apologies to make. Everything's flowing all at the same time. I live on the boulevard of crime. I drive fast cars and I eat fast foods. I contain multitudes. But I bet you in a previous
fast women.
I bet you in a previous Dylan version, he wrote the fast women. Then he was like, I don't want to get canceled, so he changed it to fast cars.
Why? But why would you get canceled for that?
Because people don't want to hear that women are fast. I think that's a cancelable adjective to describe a woman as fast.
So you know what's weird about that, though? I know this is a real sidetrack, but like calling somebody fast, I feel like that's like a good thing. I'm not just thinking of it in terms of like sexually, but like just like you want to be fast, you want to be quick.
But if Dylan was saying he likes fast women and he likes fast food, he would be saying that they're sexually fast. It's an old school like that.
Right. I understand.
Fast
I hear
women.
what you're
It's
saying.
exciting. Now back to Mr. Fleury. More importantly, what I loved about Mr. Fleury, it's interesting because Dopey, the currency of Dopey is how it was, right? The worst shit we ever did.
Right.
And Mr. Fleury is all about what it is now. And his I can't even call him Theo because I know his name is Theron.
Right.
And I don't think he really likes Theo. I think of Theo Huxtable from The Cosby Show.
But everybody...
Because people can't say Theron properly.
That's why he has Theo.
Yeah.
Right.
So I call him Mr. Fleury.
Right.
And I believe that Mr. Fleury really wants people to get through their fucking tragedy. Did you? And how did you, as a survivor of rape, relate to this very tough man's survival of rape?
Well, I mean, look. Anybody who talks about these kinds of things publicly, I have a lot of admiration for, especially for men, because I think that it's like as hard as it is for women to come forward with tales of like sexual abuse and rape. I think it's infinitely harder for men because of like our cultural
stigma
crap,
right.
You know? And it's funny because the day before I had been horseback riding with my trainer, who's like the president of the USHJ, which is the U.S. Hunter Jumper Association, and she's a big part.
You don't need to tell me what the USHJ is.
She's a big part of what
brought
me? Safe sport to equestrian sports. So Safe Sport, for anybody that doesn't know, is like a governing body that looks into abuse allegations, because I know you asked him a question about like if this was prevalent in hockey. I think it's prevalent across all sports where there is when there's a coach or an instructor in a position of power who spends tons of time with a kid. It happened in the equestrian sports. Like the very first guy I ever rode with was like banned last year because he had abused all these kids.
Had he done anything?
To me?
Yeah, untoward?
No.
Well, Mr. Fleury kind of like, when I asked him if it was a hockey thing or a sports thing, he was like, no, it's a systemic thing.
Yeah.
Beyond, but I mean, in education and religious education,
Totally.
We went, my family went to the mall the other night. We had a lovely evening and we went to the Olive Garden, and there's a long wait. So like you have to like do something in the time. So we went to the mall and we were going to buy jewelry for Susan, but then the Olive Garden texted that the table was ready. So you have to run back to the Olive Garden. And then after dinner, we went back to the mall and they were closing. Okay. And Linda decided that Susan should play in the horrible play area in the mall. And Susan loved it. But there was this kind of creepy guy on the edge of the horrible play area in the mall, and Linda was like very focused on this guy, and I was like, he's probably one of these kids' grandparents and like whatever, but like I don't consider pedophiles in my daily routine. It doesn't pop into my head, but obviously it's a systemic thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's so, we know it's so much more prevalent than we think. And unfortunately, whenever somebody is in a position of power, particularly one that supersedes their parental authority, because for anyone who's pursued a sport to the degree that he did, which, when I was really into horseback riding, like I thought I was going to go train for the Olympics, and the trainer who was my trainer's trainer who came to scout me, George Morris, was also banned from the U.S. Equestrian Federation. Now, he preferred men, but yeah, I mean, it's really, 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 and we know about it in gymnastics and obviously with religious leaders, particularly within the Catholic Church. I mean, it's so important that people like Fleury are talking about it, because here you have, like, as you said, like this rough and tumble hockey player who was that, and yet he was also raped, I think he said 150 times by his coach, who's a well-known figure in hockey.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And then the coach like did like a year and a half over it, and Fleury's like kept out of the NHL Hall of Fame.
Right.
But
like, it reminded me also of like Sandinsky, who was the guy?
Jerry Sandusky. Yeah. Disgusting.
In football, right?
It's just horrible. But the thing that I was most keyed in on this interview was like, in my drug addiction, like when it got bad, it was obvious, and there were no bright lights on me, and even the bright lights on me were dim enough that they didn't really hit me.
Right.
Meaning, like, I knew when the wheels came off. Like, I knew each thing that it was worse and worse and worse. And because he was the center of attention, because he was the superhero, because he was also just like the $50 million hockey player, he didn't really notice it get bad because he was in such denial. And I think that's interesting. And you kept a lot of I didn't keep my addiction hidden at all.
Yeah.
No,
I really, I think I even made notes about that. I related to that. I mean, obviously I wasn't a star hockey player, but when I was horseback riding, which was during like my teenage drug use years, I wasn't high when I rode in competition or when I was at the barn. Like I was present and like not high, because I'm not going to get on a horse high. You know what I mean? But as he said, like, that doesn't mean for like practices and things, maybe he wasn't at 100%, but him at 50% is still really good.
No,
right?
I loved when he talked about like being at the elite of the elite of the elite because he put in those hours. Like I love that kind of talk.
Yeah,
I'm like the most elite television watcher I'm like the elite of the. I put in my fucking 10,000 hours.
Television critic.
I think no, I didn't put in the hours in television criticism. I put in the hours in watching. I'm an elite watcher of TV. But like I don't know. It was an honor. We never had a hockey player.
No.
We rarely have We have a bunch of sports people coming up, but we rarely get a sports person. And like, he was cool. And I didn't tell him that I don't like Canadians and that I don't respect them because I was scared he could what?
Wait, you've mentioned this before. You have a weird
anti-Canadian streak.
Like,
I don't know.
They're kind of like the most benign.
No.
That's why you don't like them.
I don't know. Like I don't like Canadians really for a couple of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The number one reason is because when I waited tables, those people would come into the restaurant and act all nice. And I have a certain level of telepathy, and I knew they were thinking bad thoughts. And they kept those bad thoughts away from me, and they acted like everything was cool. But I knew.
They're like the British.
They're like snakes. Those Canadian. No. The English always had a little thing to say. They had something. The English could try,
yes,
but the English have to let something slip.
Yeah, that's true.
And the second they let something slip, you can just club that thing. The Canadians don't let anything slip.
Right.
You know, they're just too good.
When I lived in Paris, like I would go to London sometimes through like that Channel Tunnel. And whenever I would come back to Paris, I'd be so relieved because and I have friends that are British and Scottish who I adored, but like I would come back and I'd feel like there was this level of like hostile politeness that I'd sense while I was there that would really bother me.
In England.
And then I'd come back to France and like if somebody's a jerk, they're just a jerk.
Listen.
Like there's no hidden politeness. You know, it's not hiding under politeness.
I don't think that there's a hostile, polite. First of all, I don't hate Canadians. Secondly, I hear phone ringing. Is it ringing in our house?
Yeah, it's in your house.
It's my fucking dad's fucking phone again. Hold on for a second. Time out.
You can't just turn the ringer off and then turn it back on?
Do you not know the legend of my dad's phones?
I know he has like a zillion phones.
He has 6 phones.
Right.
So we shut 6 ringers off? Mm-hmm. No, but he gets angry if I tamper with his phone.
But what if you make a little Post-it note for yourself? So you turn it off and then turn it back on after the show. No, you won't remember.
I kind of enjoy the chaos.
All right. I mean, it's not that big of a deal.
And I just want to say that I don't really disliking Canadians is one of the more fun aspects of the show. Being hostile towards Canadians, it pleases me.
I don't know. I've known a lot of good Canadians.
Oh, give me a break. Who? Name 2.
Neil Young.
Yeah, that's true. Neil Young is a good Canadian.
I have to tell you, like, he's not somebody I know. I met him once, like, for like a second.
Who?
Neil Young. And it was like one of the only times in my life I ever felt starstruck.
Tell me the story, please.
It's not a very exciting story.
You met Neil Young. I want to hear the story.
I was working in a boutique in LA, and he came in.
Where you met Johnny Depot in the same?
No, it was a different place.
How many boutiques did you work at?
This was a place that I worked at, like, before I had, like, that really bad crack relapse where, like, I was I don't know.
I saw in your notes that
that
you disrespected Fleury for not being a crackhead like you.
I didn't disrespect him in my notes. I just said it always surprises me when somebody just sticks with snorting something and they never try it like the other ways.
Did you shoot coke too?
Yeah. But no, I didn't. Honestly, the only time I ever did a ton of coke was when I was smoking crack.
Coke like didn't affect me. Like it was, I think that's another thing in itself. It's just the way our body chemistries work, the way our brain chemistries work. Some drugs just affect people differently.
I shot speed too. I liked that better than coke. And then
crystal
I also shot
or what?
ketamine.
What kind of
crystal meth? Like good crystal meth.
I shot really bad crystal.
No, this was good stuff.
Where did you get it?
From somebody I knew in LA.
Was it Johnny Depot?
No.
Was it Neil Young? Did Neil Young come in with the good crystal? Who came in with the good crystal? And what did they say? How did you know it had the pedigree?
Well, because it was somebody I know, who I'm still friends with, who was getting it from somebody. I would get it from friends of mine who were in San Francisco. That was where I got the best crystal meth, was from friends of mine in San Francisco. Then they would bring it down to LA. And then, I don't know if you remember from the book, for a brief period of time, I dated a guy who was like a dealer, and I had like that suitcase full of like huge rocks, huge crystals of crystal meth in a metal suitcase in the trunk of my Jetta.
Okay, so you had huge crystalline crystals of meth that your friend sold. See, I'm really fascinated with briefcase full of drug stories.
Can we talk about like the A1 idiot I was, that I was like, I'll just leave it in my trunk. So stupid. But that's, I guess, the audacity of the white privilege that I had, because I wasn't worried about getting pulled over.
But listen, you got lucky.
I got really,
white,
really
brown,
fucking lucky.
yellow, green, red. It's
Really
like
lucky.
if I got pulled over with a briefcase in my trunk now,
Right.
I could see something going wrong,
Yeah.
even with all of my glorious white privilege.
Yeah. And then at a certain point, I was like, I just need to get rid of this, because of what the fuck am I doing?
And you were usually shooting the crystal or smoking the
No.
crystal?
Then I wasn't shooting. I was just snorting it.
You were snorting the crystal.
Yeah, it was really good. And actually, that
Why didn't you smoke the crystal? You smoked crack, but you snorted the crystal. I think that's
I
interesting.
smoked crack later on. I have smoked crystal. In my drug career, I had, but I didn't then.
I didn't like snorting crystal. It hurt.
It does.
It hurt so
Yeah.
bad.
I kind of liked it. I kind of liked that burn.
I hear you. I mean, I didn't
But I don't
like
like
it.
that smell that it leaves behind in your nose. And I think we've talked about this before. Like, where you go someplace and like I'm like, oh, like that smells like crystal. like there's like a weird smell.
Well, a burning a crystal. I smell the burning crystal smell from time to
it's
time.
not even the
chemi
burn.
thing.
It's like the smell, like when you snort it, the smell that's in your nose. Where I'm like, I wonder if somebody has like made some or passed through with a large quantity. It has a specific smell.
I wouldn't be surprised if it had something to do with like the cut, like the chem.
Yeah,
the-
that could be true. The chemicals.
And Fleury, you and I are getting into the how it was
Right.
quite quickly.
I know. He didn't really want to do that.
He didn't want to do it.
No.
And I wonder, like, and first of all, also, like, he played, I don't know when he played on the Rangers, but I wanted to know where
That was the end of his career.
no, it was like the third before the end. It
Oh,
was,
it was?
It was right.
I think it was towards the end.
Fine.
He was like past peak at that point.
Right, but he also was going. He was like he was going to the river to hang out with the bums and the
Right.
garbage can with the fire.
Right.
I don't think you can find a garbage can with fire in Manhattan anymore.
We were just talking about, before we recorded this, like the old New York and then the middle New York and the now New York, right?
But garbage cans full of fire are not often found in Manhattan.
But they used to be.
Oh, yeah. It was ubiquitous.
I mean, remember the West Side? The West Side Highway used to be. It baffles me when I really, really hate the. I can't even remember. Hudson River Park annoys me.
Which one?
The Hudson,
The High Line.
No, not the High Line. The big project that they did here with that horrendous statue that everybody kept jumping off of, so they closed it. Why am I not thinking of the name of it?
Hudson Yards.
Hudson Yards. Thank
Yes.
you. You know what that area was like. It wasn't that far from here.
It's right here.
Yeah.
It's right here. But you don't like Hudson Yards.
I think it's one of the biggest idiot moves in sort of urban planning.
Why do you? I mean, I don't like it because it doesn't. It reminds me
crappy.
of. It reminds me of what's that place in Los Angeles, something city, Studio City, or
Century City.
whatever. It doesn't look like it belongs here.
No.
But if you look at the city skyline, there's a lot of buildings that just don't look like
they belong,
anymore.
for sure.
And there's just a disrespect
Right.
of New York City architecture in these kind of times. But at the same time, I enjoy the bouginess of the High Line. And
I like the High Line. No, the High Line was a great project because they took this decaying elevated rail line, right, and then made it into something.
And then, but it winds up at Hudson Yards. So what are you going to do?
I know.
Dr. Drew lives over there.
Really?
Dr. Drew lives there. I used to do catering over there.
That's so
There's a big
funny.
mall. So I've done so many jobs at Hudson Yards that I
Yeah,
feel a
I'm
little
sure.
bit protective of it now.
All right. Okay.
I don't love it. And then if you walk down 8th Avenue in the early morning and you look west at the Hudson Yards, the sun hits the building in this way that it creates this spooky, mystical waviness.
That sculpture thing?
I don't know. It's the building.
What's that thing called? That thing?
It's called, I think of it as the Hive.
The Hive. I think it is called the Hive.
I don't know. Ray always would talk about the suicides off of that thing.
They keep closing it because everybody keeps jumping off of it.
Well, it looks like a great thing to
It
jump
does.
off of. It's like the NYU library.
Did you ever see that? I know we're really going on side tangents, but did you ever see that movie, The Bridge, about it was about all the suicides off the Golden Gate Bridge, but some of the people that were interviewed in it survived?
No.
Really? You? elite television and documentary
No,
watcher.
I watch crap. I don't watch.
All right.
Although, I mean, that's on my notes, which is like, I've been sick, right? Oh, you want to talk about The Bridge? Let me hear about you.
Oh no, there's not, you should watch it. It's about like all of these. There's footage because of like the cameras that they had there of people jumping off the bridge. It's and there's people who survived it, and that's really interesting, and like sort of the history of it and all the things that have happened there. And there are people that like, there was somebody who survived their fall and then came back and did it again and didn't survive their fall. Like,
wow. I think that's interesting. Like his suicide, Mr. Fleury's suicide ideation, like he had the gun in his hand,
Yep.
he had the gun in his mouth, and he knew that he didn't want to die.
Well, that was what in the bridge, what a lot of people who survived said is that right after they jumped, they realized they didn't want to die.
Right. You know,
I think that's common. I mean, I think that I shouldn't say that's common. I think that does happen for a lot of people.
Well, every time my family goes on vacation, we'll drive across the Throgs Neck Bridge or the Whitestone Bridge and the
Cuomo.
I guess it's called the Tappan Zee. Is it Cuomo now?
I don't know.
One of those bridges.
But it'll always be Tappan Zee to me.
And Nora, Tappan Zee is a good name.
It is.
Nora, every time we drive across the bridge, she asks these two questions. Number one, do you think you would die if you jumped off this bridge? And then the second question is, she says, do people jump off this bridge to die? Right. Every time we drive across any bridge, those are her top two questions.
I don't know if you remember this from living in LA. There is a bridge in Pasadena off the 134 called, its nickname is the Suicide Bridge. And it's a beautiful old bridge. It's a gorgeous bridge. And they have like special, like sort of chicken wire fencing to prevent people.
Right.
But it was, everyone calls it the Suicide Bridge. I don't even know what the name of the bridge is.
I don't know either.
It goes like near the Rose Bowl, like over the Arroyo.
Okay.
You don't remember?
Thank you for this great tangent in bridges. I was sick this week, and I had an opportunity to get into my television watching, and I watched a few programs, and I don't know if you're watching these shows or not. Did you watch the new Curb Your Enthusiasm?
I haven't. You know, I didn't even watch. Like, I'm really behind. I didn't watch the last season.
Wow. Then
Seth is like obsessed. That's my husband. He's obsessed. I don't know if he's watched this one yet.
I find the music. The last season was probably the best season, so you're in for a treat.
I know. I need
it's
to do
really good, and I find the music to just instill. Like, you can't find a better place for me than to have a sore throat, a headache, bleary eyes, and dun 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 playing. Like, that's so you didn't see that.
I didn't, but I did see that you posted it on your Instagram stories, and there was a box of Kleenex next to you.
I wanted to show that I was in my happy sick place.
No, because it wasn't a sock.
Wow, but the reason you don't even want to know about this morning. Oh my God.
Oh, no.
I mean, my sock, it's like people often describe masturbating into socks.
Right.
I've never done that.
Right.
Like, I don't need to go into what I've done,
No.
but the sock that I use on the train to blowing my nose is become like, it looks like a sock that many people have masturbated in. It is
So if somebody saw it, they'd be like, oh, he for sure jerked off into this sock.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And this morning, I'm sitting on the train, and I'm not like blowing my nose and shit,
Right.
but all of a sudden I sneeze, and mucus flies.
The worst.
And this man who's sitting behind me gets up and walks away.
I would too.
No, you wouldn't. You would have
If
stayed.
somebody sneezed all over me?
Yeah, I didn't sneeze on him.
No.
I just sneezed, and he was just like, I'm gone.
Well, he doesn't want to get sick.
Now, I think we should get into Ask Erin.
All right.
I'm going to ask you about more TV.
Is there anything else that we need to say about Fleury? I feel like there is. Hold on. Let me just look at my notes. I thought it was, I'm always impressed when people know their number of days, which I quickly did the math at. So he's got a little over 16 years. So I'm a couple years ahead of him.
So competitive.
I know. I like a lot of what he said.
So how many days do you have? Big time. Big time Erin Khar.
I don't know. I have I don't even know my exact date. It was like the first week of March in 2003.
Okay.
But I don't know the exact. I could probably look it up. And
so you don't have a
count
figure.
Days, no.
He does.
Yeah.
To this day.
I know.
What else you got?
So I liked what he talked about. Like at first, like I was like, oh, he's like gonna get real God on things. But then I did like that he talked about like his definition of spirituality were like our relationships and connection. And I totally think that. And I like that he recognized that trauma is for a lot of people, including himself, is the source of the addiction, and that the addiction itself is just your shitty coping mechanism as a response to trauma, because I do agree with that. One thing I do want to say for anybody who listened to it, I know he said he was like anti-big pharma, and he's like, oh, well, there's exceptions if like somebody's like schizophrenic or has bipolar disorder. But like as somebody who decided to go back on medication when I had 7 years sober, I think that...
Didn't you like the way I handled it though? I said everyone should take whatever they need.
Yes, I did. I
very
appreciated
inclusive.
that. I mean, because I think that like a lot of times what I experienced when I was just doing like 12 steps, and like there were some people who were like, oh, if you take Wellbutrin, you're not sober, which is complete bullshit. I saw a lot of other people too that maybe needed... There are a lot of people who end up in recovery who also have co-occurring mental health issues, and when they don't get them treated, they're far more likely to relapse. And I know like you guys talked about like that all it takes is a willingness, and that's bullshit. It does take a willingness. You have to be willing, but that's not all it takes.
What do you mean?
There was towards the end of the interview,
it's funny you defended Dr. Carl Hart snorting fucking Afghani heroin by the fire for the whole fucking episode. Now you're going against us talking about the goodness of willingness.
No. I'm not saying that willingness isn't good, and it is necessary, but he said like all you need is, or like you guys were talking about like all you really need is willingness.
Now you're gonna you guys us, but okay. What's your point?
I agreed with like almost everything he said. I'm just saying that I'm saying this for anyone who's listening, because not everybody who is listening to Dopey right now is sober.
No.
Not everybody who's listening to Dopey right now is just doing 12 steps. There's a lot of people who listen who are doing medicated assisted treatment. There are a lot of people who are...
Slow down. What are you talking about? What does that have to do with willingness?
Because it's not just willingness. I don't want people to think that like if they relapsed that they hadn't been willing. I think that
No. I think his point.
Yes.
And I've gone to a similar place as he goes to. If you're capable of having like crazy willingness,
yes,
you're capable of doing a lot of things.
100%.
I think that was his point.
Okay, and I agree with that. I always just think of it like the way that I always think about it. It's not for me. I'm solid, like in where I'm at in my recovery. But I always think of like the person who may be listening and feel like they really want it, but they don't know if
they're not willing. They're not willing to not take Suboxone. They're not willing to not smoke weed.
And it's not about willing. That just may be what they need right now, and that's okay. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying this just so that anyone who's listening
feels included.
It feels included, because I think that especially when people are like struggling or they're in early recovery, you can hear something and it can fuck with your head.
Right, you resent it because it's like
I don't want it to fuck with anyone's head. That's all.
Okay, so it's like one of those things where you do not have to be willing to do anything in order to get sober.
No.
However,
it helps.
Well, no, I think supreme willingness is like the ultimate cheat code to recovery.
Right.
Like, I don't disagree with you, and I think there are, multitudes of people out there who like have their method of recovery, their path to recovery, and I say, more power to you. Awesome. I think willingness is a great cheat code, though.
Willingness is, listen, I had to be willing to go get treatment for my trauma and mental health issues, or I wasn't going to stay sober. I couldn't do it.
Well, you are also willing to not do 12 step. You know what I mean? It's like there's
that's true too. I was willing to be like, I need to try something else because I'm banging my head against a wall. So yes, I agree with all that. And like I said, it's not so much for me that I'm saying this right now. It's just that I'm
Don't
really
worry
sensitive.
about them. No, just speak for yourself. Okay?
No,
Leave them out of
sensitive
this.
to the people, because look, I can already tell from the Ask Erin questions that we get that there are a lot of people who are listening to this and are fucking struggling.
Listen, everybody's struggling. Well, everyone, even if you're doing well, you're struggling.
All right.
Life is suffering.
Yeah. Sure.
But willingness is one of those words that can be molded into a lot of different things. So, but I hear your point.
Right. That was, I just had to tag that little thing on there. But I was impressed by a lot of things he said. I really liked what he said about his version of spirituality is all about the relationships that we have and the connections that we have with other people, because that's right. I'm like right there with him on that. Like, I definitely think that connection, like addiction equals disconnection. So like everything that we do in recovery is about connecting. That's what you and I are doing here right now, like connecting with each other, having this conversation, and with everybody listening. Sorry, I'm talking really fast.
That's okay. I'm listening equally as fast. But I think that I think all that is true. I think the coolest thing about Mr. Fleury is that he was remarkably honest.
Yes.
And he was really talking about honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness as a triad. And like, listen, you can be a fucking liar who's unwilling to do anything and still get well. There's no reason you can't make your own path. These are just easier ways to do it. Now today we're going to do one Ask Erin question.
Okay.
So
it's a lot of pressure. It better be a good one. Which one do you want to do?
I don't know. Whatever one. I don't care. Whatever you like.
Okay. Do we want to do? This one's juicier, right? Like they don't want to hear the other one.
All right, do it.
All right. Hi, Erin. I just listened to the Dopey episode you did, and I need some advice.
Uh-oh.
I've been addicted to pills, opiates, for the last 4 years. No one knows. Not my wife, not my kids, not one single friend. When I was younger, I'd taken Oxy recreationally, but it didn't really amount to anything. Then cut to 4 years ago. We had our second kid, and things in my relationship with my wife just disintegrated. It's not really anyone's fault. I care about her, but I don't think we are in love with each other.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, I became really depressed, and if I'm honest, I think I've had depression most of my life. I went home to help take care of my dad after his back surgery, and the pills were there, and I took one, and it just clicked. Now I feel like my whole life is structured around making sure I have enough pills to feel okay and to not get sick, obviously, which must be really hard now that pills are harder for people to get. I know this can't go on. In some ways, my marriage has been better because it's like my wife and I have separate lives, but we can play family.
I'm sure he can order it off like
dark web.
Yeah, or even off like Craigslist or something.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I'm sure it's
Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, I'm sure that's doable. Chris would get his drugs off like weird mainstream
right.
websites. But continue, please.
I just don't even know where to begin. I make a good living. I love my kids, but I feel like I'm drowning. I know I have to stop, but I don't want to go to rehab. I'm also afraid that without the drugs, my wife and I won't make it. Sorry for rambling. I'm not sure what my question is. I guess, where do I begin here?
I have the answer.
Okay.
Willingness. This guy needs to find some fucking willingness to fucking do something.
Right.
Like, I don't know. In my experience, I've never been able to get out of a habit without being willing to go away. Like, fucking holy shit. Like, this guy needs a break. I recommend practicing willingness, taking a break, fucking admit it. You know, put your hands up. You fucked it up. It's over. You know, admit that it's done and get on the path. Now go to the pro, the non-licensed therapist advice. Ask Erin.
Well, I mean, I agree that I think the really nice thing about going away somewhere is that you have a safe time, a safe place and time to sort of process the acuteness of what you're dealing with without the outside world interfering.
Or just the pressure of knowing that you can go use. I mean, that's for me. That was like I could not get well at home because I needed to get high.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Whereas when I knew that I went away, the jig was up.
Right.
You know?
No, totally. I mean, that's when I went to rehab the second time. I was trying to do it at home, and I just knew that I wasn't going to do it. That said, like, you know, the last time that I detoxed with the help of a doctor using buprenorphine over 7 days. So, I mean, I think that there are a lot of different ways. I think that certainly going to rehab is a good idea, but you absolutely could do like some sort of outpatient care and do a tapered sort of program with Suboxone. There are a zillion different ways to do it now that just didn't exist in the 90s.
I think it creates. Listen, I don't disagree with that. And I just know that, like, when I did outpatient, I would be copping on the way home.
Mm-hmm.
And when I would go get a buprenorphine prescription, I would like cop on the way home and not take it. You know what I mean? Like I would put shit in the way when I was left to my own devices.
Right.
I went the wrong way.
But it goes back to the thing of like what you said with like willingness, because because when you
Professor Fleury's willingness.
When I was pregnant and I knew that I had to get off of drugs, I didn't want to go to rehab. I wanted somebody to detox me in a way that would make it bearable. And I did that. And I wasn't trying, like I'd made the decision and I like committed to that, and I was going to be willing to try. I was willing to try the buprenorphine because I was not succeeding at doing it on my own.
Totally.
So yeah, I mean, I think that for sure you need to tell somebody in your life, if you can get even like an appointment with a therapist who is well versed in addiction, that would be a really good idea, because that would be a professional who could help you make a plan and guide you through telling your wife, guide you through what the best treatment protocol would be for you. That's where I would start. I think you need to make an appointment with somebody, make an appointment with an addiction specialist, licensed therapist who can walk you through what your next step is. Because
what you shouldn't do is make an appointment with an unlicensed advice columnist and a podcast host who works in a deli. But hold on. I was going to say,
we're directing him somewhere good.
No, and I think
it's safer for people to come to us. That's,
I think even more importantly, like the point is to take action and to follow through. It doesn't matter if you go check in,
right?
If you go to whatever you're suggesting, going to a psychologist, going to an addictions counselor, whatever you do, if you follow through, if you take action and then you follow through, it's under control.
Exactly.
Like, and there's a million paths, pick one and just make sure you fucking follow through.
And he says that he makes a good living, so he should be able to financially afford getting help.
Right.
Which is often a barrier for people.
I think making a living is sometimes its own barrier because you have money. Because it's like when I had money, it was so hard to stop.
Because you're quote unquote functioning on some level,
like Mr. Fleury.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Mr. Fleury reminded me of this friend I have, who I used to get high with, who I love, one of my best friends, and he talks kind of like Mr. Fleury talks.
Was he Canadian?
No, but he's from the heartland.
Right.
Of America. And
which can veer a little Canadian.
It's similar. Yeah. There's a similar sort of slowness to the talk and stubbornness, and my friend has like 10 days sober. And yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I was talking to him, and like he wants to be able to do it on his own. I've had this conversation with him over and over and over and over.
Which is so hard because you're like, you can want it all day long, but
well, I went to I hadn't gone to a meeting in like 15 days, and I was like mental, and I was very annoyed at myself that I'd become so reliant on 12-step programs. But at the meeting, my sponsor, who I've said many times famously has big neck tattoos and has the words "real deal" across his knuckles, spelled REEL. But
is he a fisherman?
Probably, I hope so. Or he's a terrible speller. But he said, and I'm sure every meeting somebody says this at some point, but he said, we recover together and we get fucked up alone. And like, I just think that's what I said to my friend today. And I felt a little cliched saying it, but like, it's true. It's like, it's like if you can reach out and talk to somebody, same with him, like this guy, he needs to talk to people. It's great 100%. That he wrote you. It's like, it's about putting, giving up and then talking to other people who have.
I'll tell you, like, I've been doing Ask Erin for 12 years. Oh my God.
But has it ever been so robust as Dopey Ask Erin?
It has not.
You're a liar. You're a fucking liar.
I am a liar. But I love what's coming in through Dopey. But I have often, and I think this is true of like anybody who's an advice columnist, I think I'm often the first person that somebody opens up to about something. And then it's like baby steps. It's like sometimes people like that's like the first crack of the door, you know, and then they
Or like Dopey Nation Facebook. It's like there's
Yeah.
a certain or a
Totally.
Zoom 12-step
Yep.
meeting, because there's a certain amount of disconnect.
yes.
For me, it's the opposite. Because I don't feel seen or recognized, it's not even happening.
Right.
You know, I need to show up. I need
Right.
to like smell it. I need to like see the walls. I need to see I need to get a story in my head for me to be immersed in something.
Which must have been really hard for you during the pandemic when meetings weren't happening in person, right?
They were.
They were.
They were for me.
Okay.
I'm in that really elite group that always has me. No, because our meetings are outside.
Oh, okay.
So,
Oh, well, there you go.
and they took them off of the beach where I'd go, and they moved them to the supermarket parking lot.
Oh, wow.
But I wasn't going a lot, and I had
Yeah.
COVID for a long time. Actually,
You did for a long time?
I did. I had COVID for like a month or maybe even longer.
Really?
I was sick.
I knew you had COVID, but I didn't realize it was that long.
It was
I
a
had the
while.
opposite COVID experience because I got COVID and I had not one symptom.
Oh, I had all of them. I couldn't smell or taste for literally
Really?
like 50 days or longer. When I got sick this week, you know, I wanted it to be COVID. Like I wanted it to be like a real problem.
So you had an excuse
Yeah.
to just check out for a little bit.
That's all I want.
Right.
I just want an excuse to check out for a little bit. And I mean like a good 7 days
Right.
in bed.
Right.
Catching up on television, maybe rewatching some old programs that I've seen in the past. Just like I like, why not? Like it's like, oh my God, I would love a break.
But maybe can you do that a little bit this weekend?
No, we have lots of fun family plans this weekend, and
Right.
I will
Halloween.
yeah, we have a fucking party, a Halloween party on Sunday.
I have to go to 2 Halloween parties on Sunday.
Are you gonna dress up?
Well, kind of.
What are you gonna be?
Franklin wants me to be a witch, so I just got a witch hat and I'll just wear black.
All right, well that's reasonable. I have decided, I made this decision years ago that I will only have Halloween costumes where I can wear a bathrobe.
Oh.
Which is only Wizard with a bathrobe or the Big Lebowski. And I was trying to find a Big Lebowski costume,
Right.
and it didn't come
It
through.
didn't come
so
through.
as I have been the last 2 years, I'm going to again this year be a wizard with a bathrobe. If you are curious about my
A bathing wizard?
No, it's like that's my cloak.
Right.
You know, I was in the Halloween store with Nora, and I was looking for a Big Lebowski costume.
Right.
Because you wear a bathrobe.
Right.
And I mean, I don't even
You
like
could put together a big Lebowski costume.
You need that color bathrobe.
Right.
You need that color bathrobe. And I'm just going to say something that's fucked up.
You don't like the big Lebowski.
I don't think it's that good.
right.
I think it's fine.
Right.
I think the Big Lebowski is fine.
Right.
I love the idea that the dude abides.
Right.
I like that.
Right.
And I like that he wears a bathrobe.
Right.
And I like his style.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
after that, I don't like the whole fucking thing with the kid and the car. It's like, who
Right.
cares? Or the fucking the cousin or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't need that shit. Or the fucking fake. It's the story's not good enough. I don't know why people think it's so fucking
People
good.
love it.
Why do they like it so much?
I don't know.
Because the dude abides.
Because Jeff Bridges is so. I mean, the thing to love about the Big Lebowski is Jeff Bridges and John Goodman.
Right, they are great. They are great. Jeff, what's his name?
Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges dancing is just so
Yeah.
special. He's like a real country artist, you know that?
I know. I saw that movie that he did.
The problem is that
Mm-hmm.
he's really a country artist and he's not the dude. I wish in
Right.
reality he was the dude and not this
Right.
fucking guy.
Right.
Anyway, I think this was a fine edition of Dopey.
Yes.
Did you have a good time?
I did have a good time. Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add before we go?
Everybody have a safe Halloween.
Oh shit! Our YouTube shit starts on Sunday.
No, Monday
No, Sunday.
on the 31st.
Yes.
I thought you were starting on November 1st.
No, we're starting it on
Okay.
October 31st.
We finally, that I haven't even seen your daily reflections yet.
Well, on Sunday,
I'll get to see it?
I can show you after we shut
Okay.
off. But Good Morning Dopey, our weird, deep, this is what I'm calling it, the deep yet very shallow dive into the daily reflections start on Sunday. So if you're still listening to the show at this point, please tune in.
And you're going to upload them all at once or one a day?
One a day.
Yeah.
One a day.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
All right. So stay strong, Dopey Nation. And fucking toodles for Chris.
Bye.
Goodbye.
I want to take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good? Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. But I want to be good so bad. I want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And I want to take a ride up in the sky. Watch as aeroplanes just pass me by. And I want to see a Lear jetliner take a dive, just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And my shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. Shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. And I wonder would they pay it any mind when I leave this busted city far behind. I'll take the high road, however far it winds, because peace and love are very, very, very hard to find. And I want to be good so bad. Want to be good so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. Damn it, all these suckers make me mad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and I want to call my dad, and it's all I ever had, and it's all I ever had, and it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and it's all I ever had, and I want to call my dad, and it's all I ever had, and it's all I ever had. And it's all I